Right now, and it's also worth noting that this involvement of the military is not being decided by the President, but it's being decided by the Secretary of Defense, which suggests that the Pentagon is, in this issue, which is an issue of national interest, the suggestion is that the Pentagon is actually overriding the President and that the US Congress has not been consulted on these issues either. And this decision to mobilize the armed forces in the vaccination campaign is being done in what they say is an anticipation of a national emergency, even though no national emergency has yet been called. But the presumption is that a national public health emergency will occur using the WHO's level 6 pandemic as a pretext and a justification. So Canada is probably going to be doing the same thing. I believe France is going to be doing the same thing. They're going to be calling on their armed forces to play a role in support of the vaccination program. Much of the groundwork for the intervention of the military has already been clearly established. There are indications that these regional teams have already been established under US Northcom, which has been involved in preparedness, training and planning in the case of the flu pandemic. You can read all about that. That was actually a direct quote from the Northern Command website, which is usnorthcom.com. Within the broader framework of disaster relief, the Northern Command has, in the course of the last 2 years, defined a mandate in the eventuality of a public health emergency or a flu pandemic. The emphasis is on the militarization of public health, whereby Northcom would oversee the activities of civilian institutions involved in health-related services. According to Brigadier General Robert Felderman, Northcom is the global synchronizer, the global coordinator for a pandemic influenza across the combatant commands. Okay, Northcom, it's basically like a trilateral workshop. Okay, and this is the global center for controlling any type of influenza pandemic. Interesting, folks. But another interesting thing and very noticeable thing about all of these WHO and FEMA emergency protocols is this, folks. They have pages and pages and pages of outlining how these measures are to be implemented in an emergency. But all the protocols and plans are glaringly absent of what procedures will be used to roll back the protocols when we are once again in a time of safety. You see, that's the thing, folks. They won't ever roll them back. The militarized police state will already be in place, and that's it. Once it's done, it's done. And it will only get worse from there. And eventually, the citizens will be left with only 3 choices in life: either to be a slave, or to be in prison, or to be dead. And the only out will be to join the Gestapo and become a police officer, or join the military and be used to test experimental drugs on while they're out raping the world for the oil and drug cartels. End of list. And why is this all happening to our societies and to our world? Well, folks, it's all happening because we continue to allow it. That's why it's happening. I think it's time for a break. So we'll have a break, and I'll talk to you again in a few minutes. Welcome back, folks. Now, something that I wanted to talk to you about that I meant to mention earlier. In September last year, I released a film called Fight the New World Order with Global Non-Compliance. Now, on August the 25th this year, 2009, there is an event being staged called Global Non-Compliance Day. Now, this will, I think, be an ongoing thing that will be happening at least once a month. We'll probably try to eventually extend it into maybe 3 days, but for now it's just 24 hours. And so On that day, on August 25th, 2009, we invite you and all of humanity to participate in a global Independence Day where we will celebrate the freedom and creativity of the human spirit by completely disengaging from all monetary transactions for an entire day, midnight to midnight, 24 hours. This is, in effect, a complete disengagement from the entire established politico-economic matrix that enslaves us. But it was someone on Facebook who's organising this, and it's a great thing, and it's great to see it happening. So that's August 25th, folks. There's a link on my website, thecrowhouse.com, that will get you to the Facebook group where this is being coordinated. Now, getting back to the issue of the swine flu pandemic, the way things are looking with the mandatory vaccination that seems to be looming for the people of the world. What we've got at the moment is that Greece is saying that they are going to vaccinate their entire population of 12 million against the swine flu pandemic. The health minister stated that the entire population, all citizens and residents without any exception, will be vaccinated against the flu. Greece has already earmarked 40 million euros for vaccine and has placed orders with Novartis and Glaxo for 8 million doses. Apparently they're going to order another 16 million doses from the same companies in the future to do the whole vaccination program. So that's a nice tidy profit there for Baxter. On the other hand, the German Robert Koch Institute has issued a warning against the mass vaccination of Germans because of the various side effects, and they say the swine flu vaccine isn't researched nearly well enough to fulfill its purpose, and it may even cause people who have the vaccine to develop influenza simply from having the shot. So they're being a little bit more sensible in Germany at least. On the UK side of things, the medical establishment in Britain is set to roll out a large-scale vaccination program, of course in order to protect its population against the virus. It says it expects the virus to grow rapidly in the coming weeks. The country has ordered enough vaccine to cover all 60 million of its residents. Apparently the government plans to offer everyone free shots as soon as they become available. But at this stage they're saying they won't require people to get the shots. But they're going to make it available to everyone who wants it. Of course, with 60 million doses ordered, one has to wonder. So it's best to just keep an eye on that one. And of course, the companies supplying Britain with the vaccine are Glaxo, SmithKline and Baxter International. So there is most certainly grounds for filing an injunction in England against the use of the swine flu vaccine simply because of the involvement of Baxter Labs in the vaccine. Prime Minister Gordon Brown has called the UK one of the countries best prepared to cope with the swine flu, and apparently England has stockpiled enough antiviral medication, including Tamiflu as well, to treat 50% of the population. Folks, there's been countless reports surfacing around the world of children who have been given Tamiflu, and these children are experiencing nightmares, stomach cramps, diarrhea, all sorts of side effects. Don't give your kids Tamiflu. Tamiflu is simply an enormous money spinner for Roche Pharmaceuticals. None of these drugs work, folks. They're all just chemical rubbish. I suggest you all remember the smallpox pandemic that occurred in the mid-20th century. They said it was this global pandemic was going to wipe out most of humanity, and they had to roll in the vaccinations. Well, we had vaccinations here in Australia, and there were 2 infants who died from the vaccination. So the Australian government back in those days thought that this wasn't a good thing, so they stopped the vaccination program straight away. And in Australia, during that entire smallpox outbreak, we had 3 people actually die of smallpox, including the 2 infants who died from the vaccinations. On the other hand, in Germany, where vaccination was mandatory, there was 126,000 deaths from smallpox. So that sort of gives you a bit of an idea about vaccinations, folks. And it'll be the same with this swine flu. You watch, we won't see any more deaths than what we do with any normal seasonal flu until they roll out the vaccines. And then we will see the death count skyrocket. I'll say, oh, it's the second wave. The second wave is always more virulent. Folks, these things happen like clockwork. And when you gain an understanding of how this corporate control society works, it all becomes very predictable. You see, this is how they do it, folks.